I had dreamed about taking an Alaskan cruise for as long as I can remember. The cold air, the towering glaciers, the sense of distance from everything familiar. So when my sister Maya and I finally booked a cruise in mid-July of 2017, it felt like a well-earned reward. A break from the sweltering heat back home. A chance to breathe, to disconnect, to just float and be still for a while. The ship was massive, over 3,000 passengers in total. But by the second night, it already felt like its own little town. We found our rhythm fast, learning the fastest way to get from the buffet to our cabin on deck 8, picking up the show times in the main theater, and even finding a favorite bartender who never skimped on the rum. Everything felt calm, safe, predictable. But by the third night, that illusion shattered. It was July 25th. That evening, we stood out on one of the upper decks and watched the sun set behind a glacier. The sky went soft pink and pale gold, the water glassy and endless. It felt unreal, like something from a painting. Afterward, we made our way down to a family trivia night in one of the ship's lounges. The host was cracking jokes about fake murders and mystery clues. He told us to put on our detective hats because we were sailing through the wilderness. I remember laughing at that. It seemed innocent at the time, but just 2 decks away, something terrible was building. Around 9 p.m., Maya started feeling queasy from the motion of the waves, so we decided to head back to our room early. The hallway outside our cabin was quieter than usual. Too quiet. All you could hear was the low hum of the engines, louder than normal conversation. As we neared our door, I noticed something odd. 2 rooms down, from cabin E734, I heard a couple arguing. The man's voice was deep and sharp, low but intense. The woman sounded strained, like she was trying hard to keep things quiet. Her voice trembled in a way that made my stomach twist. I thought about knocking, but what would I say? I was just a stranger, a tourist, and people fight, especially couples on vacation. It's awkward, but common. So instead, I opened our door and guided Maya inside. We turned the TV on, just loud enough to drown it out. Then, about 5 minutes later, we heard it. A heavy thump. It shook our wall like someone had thrown something, or someone hard. Then came a scream, short, high-pitched, and cut off so fast it felt unnatural. Maya's eyes went wide. I didn't even have time to speak before the ship's intercom crackled to life. Security and medical team to cabin E734. The voice was calm, way too calm, but my gut told me something horrible had just happened. I opened our door just a crack and peeked out. Other passengers were doing the same, peering into the hallway with wide eyes, whispering. Then we saw him. A ship's steward sprinted past us, wearing gloves and holding a master key card. He banged hard on the door of E734. Ship security, open the door. No response. He swiped the card, opened the door, and within seconds, shouted for backup. What followed felt like a scene from a movie. Only we were in it. Everything slowed down. We held our breath. The hallway went dead silent. Then came a word I'll never forget. Blood. The steward's voice echoed through the corridor. Someone gagged nearby. I think a guest who had stepped out of their room too far. Security rushed in with a medicard. They cordoned off the hallway and ordered all of us back into our rooms. Through the peephole, I watched as they dragged a barefoot man into the hallway. He was wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt, but the shirt was soaked, nearly black with blood. His arms were red from wrist to elbow. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just kept saying the same sentence, over and over, in a flat, robotic voice. She wouldn't stop laughing at me, like he was explaining a malfunction. Like a broken machine, when one of the guards tried to cuff him, he lunged toward the balcony, like he still wanted to throw something or someone overboard. They wrestled him to the floor and zip-tied his wrists. The rest of the night felt surreal. Crew members went door to door collecting statements. One officer told us there had been a serious incident, that a woman was unresponsive. No names, no explanations, but rumors began to spread through the air vents, carried by whispers. The couple was from Utah, celebrating their anniversary. Their children had been in the next cabin, separated from the horror by a thin wall. Behind those walls, people cried, quietly. You come on a cruise to escape the world, to get away from work, bills, responsibilities, not to end up a few feet away from murder. At dawn, the captain's voice came through the PA system. He said we would be diverting to Juneau so the FBI could board the ship. When they finally let us leave our rooms, the hallway was lined with yellow tape. Cabin E734 was sealed shut, but that wasn't what drew everyone's eyes. It was the stain, a long, dark smear on the cream-colored carpet right outside the door. Even after the cleaners came through, it was still there, faint but visible. People walked by fast, snapping photos, pretending they were late for breakfast, but you could see it in their faces, that lingering horror, that feeling of being too close. Later, I learned the man's name was Jason Callister, 43 years old. The woman, his wife, Emily, just 39, investigators said Jason beat her over and over with his fists, that he shattered her skull while their daughters screamed from the other side of the door. Relatives had to pull him away, and even then, he tried to drag her body toward the balcony, tried to throw her over. In 2021, he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison, but he didn't last long behind bars. What haunts me more than the crime itself are the small details. The red stain that never fully disappeared from the hallway carpet. The way the paper flyer slipped under our door that night, advertising a murder mystery trivia show for the next morning. The thought that hundreds of us were just a few feet away, asleep, clueless. Cruise ads always show calm waters, happy families, tropical drinks with tiny umbrellas. They don't tell you that a ship is also the perfect cage. You can't run. You can't leave. You share walls, air, and lifeboats with strangers, with saints and monsters alike. It's been 8 summers since that trip, but I still flinch when I hear someone bang on a hotel wall too hard. I still picture that narrow hallway, the buzzing fluorescent lights, and the man in the blood-soaked shirt, muttering the same sentence like a broken record. She wouldn't stop laughing at me. People ask if I'd ever cruise again. I smile and change the subject, because once you realize how thin the walls are, how fast calm can turn into chaos, the idea of ever setting sail again just feels like tempting fate. I booked a 7-night summer cruise because I wanted noise, sunlight, and some company after a brutal winter working from home. I flew into Miami, rolled my small suitcase up the gangway, and handed over my ID for the key card scan. For the first time in months, I felt anonymous in a good way. Just another traveler among 3,000. My cabin was a small, inside single on deck 9. Neat and bright with artificial porthole lights that mimicked blue skies and warm sunsets. I unpacked quickly, clipped my card to a lanyard around my neck, and hurried straight to the Salloway buffet before the lines grew. That's where I first noticed him. He stood near the salad bar, already staring. Plain gray t-shirt, tan cargo pants, and a baseball cap with no logo. He looked around 40, maybe younger, strong build, short beard. Nothing outwardly odd, except for the intensity in his stare as I spooned lettuce into my bowl. When our eyes met, he smiled like we were sharing some private joke. I moved down the buffet line, quickly finished my plate, and ate alone on the open deck while seagulls trailed the ship behind us. I told myself it meant nothing. Hundreds of passengers crossed paths. Seeing one face again didn't mean a thing. That evening, the cruise director hosted a welcome show in the main theater. Purple lights flickered, the band blasted 70s hits, and I picked a seat midway back from the stage. When the host asked us all to stand and dance, I did. I laughed with strangers on both sides as we clapped and swayed in rhythm. But when I turned to glance back, I saw him again, 2 rows behind me, clapping offbeat, eyes fixed on me like before. I sat down fast, my heart pounding against my chest, while everyone else kept dancing. After the show ended, I waited until he left, then exited the opposite way. I stayed close to a few groups on the promenade deck until I reached my room. Day 2 began with sunrise yoga on the top deck. The sea wind tugged at our mats. The instructor's voice flowed gently through speakers. But on my 3rd downward dog, I looked toward the railing, and there he was, gray shirt, outside the class boundary, arms folded, hat pulled low, just watching. He didn't blink, didn't move when I shifted positions. A cramp gave me the excuse to leave early. I rolled up my mat, took the long way around the pool, and rode the elevator instead of climbing stairs. I stayed in my cabin for most of the morning, door locked, lights off, just listening to the soft hum of the ship's engines. By dinner time, I was tired of hiding. Formal night meant everyone dressed up. I wore a navy blue dress and sat at a shared table with 7 strangers. Conversations flowed, jobs, hometowns, excursion plans. I started to relax until the waiter brought a bowl of soup to the empty seat beside me, and Gray Shirt slid into it without saying a word. He didn't greet anyone, didn't even order food, just pretended to sip the soup while scanning faces around the table. When his eyes landed on me, his lips parted like a smirk or maybe something apologetic. The guy across from me asked, "Friend of yours?" I shook my head. Gray Shirt stood up and left without finishing anything. My appetite disappeared. Back in my room, I stepped out onto my small private balcony to get some air. The night was thick. The sea was black except for the white foam trailing behind. And then I saw him again, one level below, on a crew-only deck. He leaned on the railing, looking directly up at me. No passenger cabins opened onto that area. We were separated by maybe 15 feet of open air, but the second I saw him, I rushed back inside and locked the balcony door. My hand shook as I walked to guest services. The night supervisor listened carefully while I explained. Same man, everywhere. No conversation, just constant, unblinking stares. I described his clothes, build, beer cap. The supervisor typed in the manifest, tried different spellings, cross-referenced. Nothing matched. Could be a crew member off duty, he offered, but my description didn't match anyone on the crew photo grid either. He called security. 2 officers arrived, professional, polite, thorough. They walked me back to my room, checked the balcony lock, and promised they'd review the security cameras. I thanked them, hoping that would finally be the end of it. The next morning, I got a voicemail. Security asked me to come to their office. Inside, the chief officer apologized. They had reviewed every camera angle I mentioned. Not once did Gray Shirt appear in any footage. Not at the buffet, not the yoga deck, not the theater, not even in my hallway. Each time I remembered seeing him, the footage showed nothing but empty space or other guests. The officer asked gently, "Is it possible you're confusing people?" I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but fear was stronger than pride. "I know what I saw," I said. He promised extra patrols on my deck. That evening, I tried to enjoy the trivia contest in one of the lounges. Halfway through, a teammate nudged me to read a question out loud. I looked up, and there he was again, back of the lounge, leaning against a column, cap brim pulled low. I whispered my answer, stood up, and made for the nearest exit. I heard footsteps behind me. Unhurried, steady, but way too close. I broke into a run, rounded a corner, found a house phone on the wall, and jabbed the button for security. While it rang, the footsteps stopped. I looked back. The hallway was empty. Security searched every cabin and deck that night, quietly. They never told passengers what they were looking for, but I saw the extra guards at stairwells. Storage closets were suddenly padlocked. Crew whispered in corners. 2 days passed. We visited islands. I only left the ship on guided group tours, never alone. Still, I felt him, in reflections on the tender boat, behind a lifeboat as we reboard. Always just out of view. Each time I pointed, someone else looked and saw nothing. The final night of the cruise, they held a fireworks show at the bow. I stayed on my balcony, figuring the crowd might keep him away. The sky lit up with red, green, and gold. Explosions echoed across the open sea. And then, all at once, the lights went out. For a second, just one black second, total darkness swallowed the deck. That's when I heard it. A soft click. The balcony partition behind me sliding open. I turned, heart pounding, and there he was. No hat now, beard soaked in sweat, eyes wide and shining like wet stones. He stepped through the narrow gap, just watching me. He raised one finger to his lips. S-H-H-H-H-H-H-H. Somehow, I didn't freeze. I ducked beneath his arm and ran inside, threw open my cabin door, and screamed into the corridor. Passengers opened their doors. A few gasped. 2 security officers were on me in seconds. They stormed into my cabin, checked the balcony. It was still open, the partition ajar, but the next cabin was occupied by an elderly couple. Both needed walkers just to stand. No one could have slipped past them. We searched the whole room, under the bed, behind the curtains, in the closet. Nothing. I believe you, one of the officers said quietly. But I can't arrest a ghost. That night, I slept in the infirmary, on a cot with a lock on the door. At sunrise, the ship docked in Miami. Security walked me off first, through the terminal, past laughing families and smiling port workers. At the customs checkpoint, I turned to look back up at the ship, and there he was. Gray shirt stood at the rail, smiling, waving, cap back on, eyes locked on mine. Then, just like that, he disappeared behind a crowd of sun-hatted tourists. I filed a full report, described everything. The follow-up emails all said the same thing. No stowaway found, no missing uniforms, no security breaches, no ghost on any footage. They offered me a voucher for a future cruise. I declined. All summer, I kept checking the news, looking for stories about disappearances at sea. Nothing ever showed up. Some friends say I imagined him, say it was just travel stress, maybe jet lag, maybe paranoia, maybe, but I still remember the weight of his stare, and that moment when he raised one finger to his lips, as if he'd be seeing me again. I work as a junior safety officer on a mid-sized cruise ship called the Pacific Dawn. My job sounds easy enough. Watch the cameras, take notes on anything strange, and alert the senior officers if something seems off. Most nights, it's quiet, just the usual passengers wandering from dinner to bars to bed. But on the 4th night out, things changed. That night, the ship hosted a big deck party by the main pool. Loud dance music, neon bracelets, and sugary drinks with paper umbrellas in them. Over 800 passengers packed the upper deck, all dancing and laughing as lights flashed over the water. Even from the security control room, I could feel the bass thumping through the floor under my chair. Around 11 p.m., a bartender radioed in with something odd. A guest named Brandon Keller hadn't returned to pay the tab he'd opened hours ago. His friends claimed he'd been drinking heavily, wandering near the rail like he was going to throw up or pass out. That kind of report is a nightmare at sea. If someone goes overboard, there's a very short window to save them. But cruise protocol says we don't stop the ship unless we're absolutely sure. Turning around a vessel this size takes time, and it puts everyone else on board at risk. So first, I pulled up the cameras. At 10:42 p.m., Brandon was at the poolside, dancing with no shirt on, flip-flops dangling from his fingers. 6 minutes later, 10:48, he staggered to the starboard railing, balancing a drink on the polished steel. Rain from a passing cloud burst speckled the lens, but I could still see him. One of his buddies shouted something like, "Bro, you good?" Brandon lifted the drink and gave a lazy salute. That was the last clear frame I had. The room went quiet. My supervisor asked over the comms, did he badge into any doors after that? Every keycard swipe is logged on the ship, from cabin doors to restricted maintenance zones. I pulled the logs. At first, nothing stood out. Brandon's cabin had last been opened at 8:17 p.m., but then something weird popped up at 11:03 p.m. His card was used to unlock a heavy door on Deck 2. Down in engineering, that section of the ship is crew only. Passengers never go there, especially drunk ones. It didn't make sense. Deck 2 is 4 levels below the pool. If Brandon had fallen, he'd be in the ocean, not swiping into a locked corridor. I loaded the camera feed for that hallway, expecting to see him walk in. Instead, the screen filled with gray static. No video, just blank noise from exactly 11:02 to 11:07. The perfect 5-minute blackout. Every other camera on board worked fine. Only this one, the one that mattered, had glitched. The captain held off on triggering an overboard alert. Instead, we sent Officers Reyes and Bell down to investigate Deck 2. I stayed on comms, flipping between cameras as they made their way into the bowels of the ship. The air down there is thick, diesel fumes and disinfectant. Everything coated in condensation. When they reached the door, it was shut but not locked. Officer Bell pushed it open with one gloved hand, and it creaked like something in a horror movie. Inside, the corridor was tight, steel walls, low ceilings, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Broken glass littered the floor. Maybe a dropped bottle? Further in, behind a row of trash compactors, Officer Reyes found a balled-up beach towel. It had the ship's logo on it, but the center was soaked through with something dark and sticky. "It's blood," Reyes said over the radio. His voice was flat, but I could hear the tension in it. Bell scanned the area with his flashlight and found a forced maintenance locker. The keypad was smashed in, wires dangling loose like torn veins. Inside, 2 missing coveralls and a set of bolt cutters. Whoever had been there was trying to blend in or break out. They sealed the area and marked it off. We now had a missing guest, a bloody towel, missing gear, glitched video, and a fake crew disguise. Still no sign of Brandon. Then it got worse. Another key card swipe showed up, 11:19 p.m. Same card, Brandon's, this time at a service elevator near the theater. That shaft connects down to Deck 1, with the cargo doors open directly onto the sea. I pulled the footage again. Another perfect blackout. 3 full minutes of corrupted static. The theories started piling up fast. Either someone had cloned his card, or they had his real one after taking him, and somehow they were disabling the cameras just long enough to stay invisible. My mouth was dry. I kept wiping my palms on my uniform. It was cold in the control room, but I was sweating like I was back on the pool deck. At 12:27 a.m., Officer Reyes called in again. "We found the card," he said. It was lying near the cargo loading bay, next to an open vent. The vent was wide enough for a person to crawl through, and it led to the ballast tanks. Eventually, to a shell door just a meter above the waterline. That door had a fresh scrape by the latch, like it had been pried open with a tool. I pictured it. Someone lures Brandon away, maybe drugs him, maybe worse, swipes into crew areas to avoid suspicion, steals coveralls, carries him through the lower decks, and escapes through a hidden maintenance hatch into the dark ocean night. But why? Why take the body? To make it look like an accident? Or something else? Something worse? At 1 a.m., we finally slowed the ship and launched a spotlight search. The captain made a calm announcement about technical delays, asking guests to remain in their cabins. Searchlights combed the waves, white arcs of light swinging over miles of black sea. But nothing floated back at us. The Coast Guard was notified. They'd meet us at dawn. By morning, the party deck looked the same. Staff rinsed the dance floor clean, loungers stacked, music playing again. Passengers assumed it had all been a safety drill. Only a few of us knew the truth, that Brandon Keller was gone, and that we had no idea how or why. The Coast Guard searched 50 square miles over 2 days. Divers checked the hull. Nothing turned up. His family flew home alone. His luggage was sealed in plastic wrap, returned with condolences. The official record says he was intoxicated and fell overboard, presumed drowned. But I saved 2 things from that night. A screenshot of the door access logs, showing his impossible swipes, and one still image from the pool camera, taken at 10:48 p.m. If you zoom in, just over Brandon's shoulder, there's a figure in the shadows, wearing dark clothes, face hidden by a towel, lowering something metallic into a backpack. He doesn't have a drink, no wristband, doesn't move like a guest. He's there for 1 frame, then gone, like he never existed. I keep telling myself it was all a coincidence. Static interference, card swipe glitches, but I still check those logs every shift, just in case someone else shows up who isn't supposed to be on the ship.